Welcome to the Eighth Wonder of the World webinar. My name is Corey Cox. I'm with the Utah Retirement Systems, and I have here with me Mike Wilson, who will be giving us uh, our presentation today. But before we get to Mike, I just have a couple of housekeeping items just to kind of let you know of some of the different things that are available to you on the screen here. If you do have a question, you can note those in the Q&A section there at the bottom of your screen. Your question will be only viewed by me and my behind-the-scenes colleagues here at URS, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions. In addition, throughout the presentation today, we will have a few poll questions for you, and we'd really appreciate your participation in answering those questions. All responses are anonymous. You won't be graded like you were in school. In addition, we are anticipating this to be about 20-25 minutes or so. So hopefully we can get this done and you can get on with your work there. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Mike Wilson. He is one of our retirement planning advisors. Also is a retirement investment certified professional, a certified professional planner, or financial planner, excuse me, and has a master's in business administration. With him, he actually has more than 30 years of financial planning experience, so he's a great resource here on our team at URS, and really, in all honesty, we do truly believe he is our retirement guru. I don't know if you've ever seen his videos that he's done, but he is very knowledgeable in the retirement arena. With that being said, I'd like to turn the time over to Mike Wilson and the Eighth Wonder of the World.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Corey. And I will be glad to take you to lunch tomorrow for that very kind introduction. So, you guys have probably all heard of the seven wonders of the world, such as the Great Wall of China, the pyramids in Egypt. But there is an eighth wonder of the world. In fact, that eighth wonder of the world is what we call compound interest. And this was not me saying this. This was actually this pretty smart guy named Albert Einstein. And he said it's the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, but he who doesn't pays it. So that's the eighth wonder of the world. And I figure if a pretty smart guy like Albert Einstein called that the eighth wonder of the world, it's something we should probably all know about. And actually, it comes in really handy in the retirement planning world. So let me start. Let me give you, we've got a couple polling questions we'll ask you here. And this is your chance to weigh in on some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So just real quickly, and again, this is all anonymous, so go ahead, answer this question if you will. Let us know. So Albert's going to put $100 into a retirement account earning 5%. And in 5 years, how much do you think he's going to have in his account? And so your choices there, 105, 125, 128. So take just a couple seconds, answer the question, if you will, really quickly, and then I'll tell you what the answer is. Okay, keep weighing in, give you another 3-4 seconds or so. Okay. All right, so good. Well, thanks. All right, so let me show you now what the answer is and how we arrive at it. Okay, so here's how compound interest works. It's really this idea of interest earning interest on itself. So, for instance, year one, 5% of $100 is just $5. So at the end of year one, Albert's got the $105. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the snowball effect starts taking place. Because in year two, he earns 5% of $105. So you'll notice he actually makes an extra 25 cents there in year two. So he ends up year two with $110. Probably, that's what you would expect, but actually just a tiny bit more. There's an extra 25 cents, and that's interest compounding on itself. Year three, that interest on interest continues to build. Year four, and then by the time we get out to year five, he actually has close to $128. Now, you might think, it should just be 125 even, but with compound interest, you have an extra $2.63. Now, granted, that's not much, right? But this was only 100 bucks. Let's say we're talking about maybe an initial investment of 10,000. In that case, by year 5, you'd actually have an extra $263 on top of $2,500 of earnings from the 5% interest. And the numbers obviously would get bigger from there. So that's this idea of interest earning interest on itself. So sometimes we kind of refer to this as kind of the snowball effect. And as retirement savers, sometimes it's a little frustrating, particularly when we're first starting out building our retirement accounts. You're putting in 10 bucks a paycheck or 50 bucks a paycheck or whatever, and your money's building slowly. And in those early years, a lot of times it doesn't seem like your money's growing very, very fast. But it's actually in the later years, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30, even 40 years down the road, that's when you start seeing this exponential growth, or in this graphic here, the rapid growth, when the curve really starts to head towards the sky. So it's really important. One of the other, I guess, key takeaways from this session is that time is this huge ally. The more time you have, the better. And everybody has time. Even if you're in your 50s and 60s, you still have time to be saving towards retirement, because it's really life expectancy. When we think about time for retirement, we actually need to think in terms of life expectancy. So it's not just, am I going to, have X amount of dollars by age 65, but it's, oh, I might live to 85. Hey, that's an extra couple decades. So we really do have a lot more time than you might think. So you may have also heard of what's called the Rule of 72. And this is a good little principle to understand, particularly if you have teenage kids, adult kids. Share with them this idea of the Rule of 72. It'll grab them. I did this with my daughter when she was in high school. She was about 17, and boy, it opened her eyes and it gave her the saving bug. But here's how it works. So you take 72 and then divide it by whatever rate of interest or earnings rate you think you're going to have. So, let's a simple example. If I think I can earn 8% on my investment, and I'm not saying anything would actually do that. This is just math, simple math example. So 72 divided by 8%. The answer, that's the number of years it takes your money to double. So 72 divided by 8 would be 9. So every 9 years, theoretically, my investment's going to double. So if I have $1,000 today, 9 years it doubles to 2,000. 9 more years it goes to 4,000. 9 more years it goes to 8,000, and on and on and on. And again, sometimes people say, well, that's great, but it's not really growing all that fast. Well, that was just a one-time investment of $1,000. If you say do $1,000 every year now for 10 years, now you're getting into $20,000, $40,000, $80,000, and on from there. So if we continue the example from the previous slide, remember, just starting with initial $100, over 30 years later, that initial $100 grows to over 432. And again, think about, boy, what if we're talking $1,000, $10,000? Boy, these numbers can really, really grow. But the big growth, again, the rapid growth, that's what's going to take place later in retirement. And if you want to see examples of the Rule of 72, you can just Google it. There's lots of examples of it. There are calculators out there that'll help you figure that out as well. But again, the point is, start sooner rather than later. Time's on your side. Okay, so the big impact really is, if you're in your 20s and 30s and you're saving for retirement, time has the biggest impact on your retirement account balances, because you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 years sometimes for your money to be growing in your 401k or in your Roth IRA. If you're in, so in your 20s and 30s, let me give you an example of how this might work. And these were a couple actual URS members, a couple school teachers I was talking to in one of the school districts in southern Utah. Both were teaching. When I spoke to them, they were both in their early 40s. He had taught for about 20 years. She had taught for about 12. She'd dropped out for a few years to raise their kids. And I sat down with them one-on-one. That's one of the things we do as retirement planning advisors is meet with you guys, our members, individually and help estimate their tier one or tier two benefits, their 401k balances, their Social Security, all that good stuff. Well, these guys, now mind you, they're in their early 40s. The husband had about 200,000 in his 401k, and his wife had about 120,000. And I'm like looking at them thinking, how in the world did you do this on teacher salaries? Because when they started, they were probably got started, say, in the late 90s. And I think we all know government employees, we don't make a whole lot of money. And for sure, 20 years ago, teachers probably weren't making very much money. I'm like, how in the world do you do that? What they said was when they first hired on as teachers, an older teacher, might have been a principal, I couldn't remember exactly who it was, somebody told them, though, you need to start saving 10% of your income in your 401k and learn to live on the other 90%. And being new, not knowing any better, they just said, well, okay, I guess that's just what everybody does. So that's what they did, and boy, has it ever paid off. At this pace, I think they'll probably easily have several hundred thousand by the time they reach their 50s. These guys could even be cracking high hundred thousands by the time they're in their 60s, maybe even a million, bucks. So anyway, again, time when you're in your 20s and 30s, that's the big thing. In your 40s and 50s, it's how much you save. That's what's going to have the biggest impact on your retirement account balances. So as we get older, particularly if we haven't started, maybe we got a late start saving, then what we really need to concentrate on is saving more money because we have fewer years for that snowball effect to take place. So early on, time's the big thing. Save what you can. If you get started later in your 40s and 50s, that's cool, but just realize you may need to be saving more later on. All right, let me give you graphically how this might work, okay? And this graph's a little funky to understand, but let me see if I can kind of walk you through it. So we're going to assume this member here is 25 years old, and she's going to make $25,000 a year, never going to get any salary increases. So just for the next 40 years, she's just going to make 25 grand per year, but she saves 10% each year. So she's saving $2,500. So if you look on the lower left, that little gold savings bar, so she's going to save $2,500. Okay, at 65, that 2,500, if you look up at the top of that very first bar for age 25, that 37,436, that's how much the initial 2,500 grows to. And again, we're just going to assume that, she's earning maybe like a 7% return. Again, this is just hypothetical. These are just numbers, okay? Who knows what you'll actually earn? That's a whole other topic we could talk about. But again, we'll just pretend she's going to earn 7%. But the point is, just like I showed you earlier with the compound growth, the $100, how it grew a little bit every year, she starts her first year, that 2,500, by the time she reaches 65, it's worth over $37,000. Year 26, she does another 2,500. And it's going to be worth, you look at the red bar right next to it, it's probably another 37,000. Year 27, and on and on and on. So what you can see each year, each of those years, when we add all those up, the total is the big impact there up at the top, the $537,000. Now, if you look at year 65, look out at age 65, she still puts $2,500 in, but it doesn't have any time to grow, so it's basically just $2,500. So those early years turned around and generated 10 times, even more than 10 times as much as the initial 2,500. The later years, they just didn't have as much time to grow. Again, that's the whole point. That's the reason to start early. And here's where this really comes into play. Let's look at just those first 10 years. So the first 10 years when she's been putting away $2,500 per year, that money alone of the 537,000 becomes more than half, the 281. So those first 10 years eventually grow and become $281,000, which is more than half of her final account balance of 537. So Graphically, nice simple example there. Again, the power of starting early, the power of compound interest. And in this case, 40 years, that's a wonderful time period. Again, 30 years counts, 20 years counts, even 10 years. It can all add up. All right, so punchline here, the first 10 years really, really matter. So if nothing else, you don't take anything else away from today, start early. All right, so why does starting early pay off? Well, if you don't believe the math, here's what our current retirees tell us. So we go out and we talk to our retirees in the URS system. If you look at any national polls of retirees, the biggest source of regret for folks getting close to retirement or in retirement, everybody says, boy, I wish I had known about this when I was in my 20s or 30s. We all wish we could have started when we were, early on. So the point again, start early. The second biggest source of regret, everybody wishes they had saved more. Because again, once you look back and you start realizing, oh, if I'd only known and would have saved more, a little bit more, um, could my I could have had that much bigger of a 401k or an IRA or 457 plan, whatever it happens to be. So again, bottom line here, starting early pays off. All right, now let's look again at an example. What I want to do this time, though, got another polling question for you. So this time, and again, you guys can weigh in on this. I'll show you what the answer is here in just a sec. So Julie is going to earn $30,000 a year, and she really drinks the Kool-Aid. She listens to today's seminar. She's like, man, I'm going to go save 15% of my salary in her 401k. She's going to save from 25 to 65, 40 years. How much will her account be worth, do you think, if she earns, say, a 6.5% rate of return? Okay? And I know you don't have calculators and all that stuff, so that's why we gave you a couple answers to choose from. So take a stab at it. Again, it's not, you're not graded. It's not a right or wrong thing, but just think about that. She's going to save 15%, 40-year period, earns 6.5%. How much money might she have? $500,000, 750, more than $1 million. Okay, we got a lot of you weighing in. I'll give you another 3-4 seconds. Okay, all right, so let's look and see what's actually going to happen here. Let me show you on this next slide here. All right, so here's what happens. So Julie here is in the orange, okay? And she winds up with more than $1 million. So kudos to those of you who took the wild guess and said, oh, $1 million. But again, she saves from 25 to 65. She earns 6.5%. Notice how much she's contributed, about $282,000. Well, that's a lot of money. But on the flip side, boy, it's almost grown fourfold because she's got more than $1 million. Now, let's pretend, though, maybe you're older or maybe you're just getting started later. So Sally in purple, she saves from age 35 to 65. Same thing, still doing 15%, but she's only got 30 years to save. So she doesn't put in quite as much, 232, but it still almost triples in value to 600, a little bit more than $600,000. Linda, meanwhile, so in gray, Linda, say, gets started really, quote unquote, late, if you will. Maybe she waits till her 40s. She's only going to save for about 20 years, but she decides she's going to save even more. So let's say 20% in this case. Again, she puts in about 230, still almost doubles to over 440,000, just within a 20-year period. So again, the point is, get started early. Don't wait. Don't delay. It's never too early to start, nor is it ever too late. And if you're going to take full advantage of the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest, you got to get going on that stuff. That's the main point. So what if you want to run some of your own numbers? On the URS website, don't go there now. I can see if you're paying attention or not, so pay attention. No, I'm just kidding. On the URS website, we have a calculators link. If you click on that page, you'll want to go to URS savings plan, and then you'll want the calculator that's highlighted here, the savings plan future values calculator. And I've got a screenshot of what that looks like. You can enter if you already have a current balance, 401k, IRAs, whatever, put that in there. Then it just takes some basic information, your monthly gross wages. If you think you're going to get any salary increases over the years, 1% a year, 2% a year on average, what percentage you want to save. We've used 5% in this example. If your employer maybe does some matching contributions, or maybe they just give you money flat out, 1%, 2%, whatever, you can enter that. How many years you think you're going to save, the rate of return you think you might earn, and then how many years you want to receive money, say, in retirement. So maybe you think you're retiring, say, at age 65, and you want 20 years. That take you out to age 85. So you'd have 20 years of withdrawals. Then the rate of return you expect to earn when you're in retirement. And again, if you're not sure about these, just use the defaults. Average rate of inflation, if you care about that. We can explain that again, probably in another topic. But again, just go with the default if nothing else. Anyway, you hit calculate, and what that tells you is, just in this simple example, 225 grand just by saving 5% of this person's salary over a 35-year period. Not too shabby. So again, doesn't take necessarily a lot to save now to generate big returns later. But again, the more you can set aside now, obviously the bigger the numbers are going to be down the road in retirement. And in this example, she actually invested about a little over 50,000, and it more than quadrupled to over 225,000. So that's compound interest working for you. But guess what? Compound interest can also work against you. Back to Einstein's quote, right? If you understand compound interest, it works for you. If you don't get it, boy, it can work against you. So what's one of the places it could potentially work against you? Well, here's a couple different scenarios. So depending on what your investment fees are, because all investments have costs associated with them. The URS savings plans, our investment options, our average fee right now is about 0.4% a year. Not uncommon to see in the private sector. Might see investment fees of, say, 1%, sometimes as even as high as, say, 1.5%. And what this chart is showing you is how much fees, or how big a hole fees can chew into your savings account. So, for instance, on the left side, on the right side, you can kind of see all the assumptions again, what we think would happen. So this person potentially winds up with more than, what's that, $350,000. They've spent roughly $40,000 in fees. So in total, that if there were no fees whatsoever, might have earned 400 grand. They lost about 41,000 of that. That's with a 0.5% fee. You move down to the next set of charts. Now somebody with a 1% fee. Oh, wow. Okay, so gosh, their fees went from 41,000 to 77,000. So more than $30,000 more. And again, a 0.5% versus 1% doesn't sound like a big difference. But over 35 years, boy, those dollars can really, really start to add up. And again, you can see the same thing with the 1.5% example. Where else, though, can compound interest get you? Well, credit cards, right? If you're paying 12, 15, 18% on a credit card, that's pretty high interest, and that compounding, just like it worked for you, can also work against you. Also, if you have any high interest rate personal loans, maybe an auto loan, student loans, payday loans, cash advances, again, depending on the interest rate, that same principle, compound interest, can definitely be working against you. So, whenever possible, we certainly encourage folks to get rid of those higher interest debts whenever possible. So, again, Einstein's quote, it's the eighth wonder of the world. So the question is now, do you understand how compound interest works? And so one last quick polling question for you. And that is, if you do understand how interest works, what are you going to do about it? Okay? And again, just take a quick second, answer these if you will. Again, it's all anonymous. Nothing's right or wrong here. Give you another 3 or 4 seconds, and then we'll close this one up. I do appreciate those of you who've decided to buy the poster of Einstein. I think that's awesome. Very important, yes. So go out and get the Einstein poster. All right, so that was quite silly. All right, so thanks for listening up to this point. But if you got like another 3 minutes, let me do a bonus section with you, okay? So we'll go even a little bit beyond the eighth wonder of the world. So just a little extra information, a little extra math for you. Let's talk about what happens when you have a loss, say, in your retirement account. So you got $1,000, year one, your investment drops 20% in value. Maybe it's in the stock market or something like that. The question then is, what percentage gain do you need in year two to get back to $1,000? And again, you think less than 20%, 20%, maybe more than 20%. Don't have to answer this one, just keep the answer in your head real quick. So what do you think? Less than 20, 20% right on, more than 20%? Well, mathematically, the answer is 25%. And you're like, no, wait a minute, how can that be? Let's do the math. So we had a 20% loss the first year, that's $200. So our account at the end of year one was only worth $800. We need to grow the account by $200 to get back to 1,000. Well, $200 divided by 800, which is our current account balance, 25%. So what's the, all right, so what does this got to do with anything? So when can losses actually help or hurt you? Hey, here's the good news. When you're saving for retirement, if there are losses in your account, say the market goes down or your investment goes down over the quarter, should you wring your hands and think, oh, I'm going to stop saving money? No, that's actually good news for you, because when the market drops, when your investments drop in value, hopefully temporarily, that means you're buying more shares in your retirement accounts at a lower cost. We also call this dollar cost averaging. On the flip side, though, if you're near retirement or in retirement, those losses are actually pretty painful. And the main reason is you don't have time to rebuild your retirement accounts. So what you hope happens if when you're in your saving years, anytime the market's going down, don't fret. Just let your regular payroll contributions keep going, and comfort yourself with the idea that, hey, I'm getting more of the so-and-so fund on sale. I'm generating more and more shares. And then in the long term, over the years, the decades, what you hope happen is the long-term trend of the market will go up, in which case then you get to retirement, you got a nice hunk of money. But when you do get closer to retirement, that's when you kind of got to pay attention to what's going on in your retirement accounts, because you may not want to be taking the same amount of risk maybe that you've been taking up to that point. And again, those are the kind of questions, if you're not sure what should my investment mix be like, those are the kind of questions that if you want to sit down with us one-on-one, we offer individual retirement planning sessions. Those you can sign up for online through your MyURS account. If you, just like you signed up for the webinar today, if you click on that same education tab, there's also a tab for individual retirement planning sessions. And so you can just pick a date and a time that works for you. We offer these sessions over the entire state, a lot of different locations. If you do happen to look and you're like, hey, I don't see anything in my area, that could just mean one of two things. Could mean we're just not in your neck of the woods that week, that month, or that particular time period, or it could simply mean we are there, but all of the appointments have been taken. So again, if you want to sit down one-on-one, you look, you're trying to sign up, don't see anything, maybe check back once a week or so, because we do typically post our one-on-one sessions weekly. And with that, we are done with the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. So now you know as much as Einstein knows. But now the big question is, are you going to put it to work for you? Are you going to put it into play? All right, and then if there are other questions, Corey and I can hang out for a bit. If you've got any other individual questions, we can answer those. Otherwise, you are free to go. Thanks for listening, and I'll let Corey wrap things up.
Hey, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, and I hope this was helpful for you. Um, we are going to be sending out an email here in the next hour or so, and we'd love your feedback with a survey. It does have a survey attached to it, so please be sure to fill that out. It is very short, so appreciate your help on that, and appreciate your attendance. Thank you so much.